around.
My wab is wabbing.
Wait, let me listen to it. Make sure it doesn't sound robot-y.
All right, I'm already streaming.
All right, Audition itself does not sound robot-y, and it didn't make an error about metadata. So
all right.
Audition is recording again. The second time.
Oh, there's 5 people waiting for the stream to start. Mondays, man.
Go away, 5
Mondays. Where Anime Day is the only day no one gives a shit about.
I think it's because we know the least about anime. So
we used to know a lot more. We barely focus on anime anymore. Like, I'd say the majority of the cartoons. I'm still watching a lot of cartoons. The majority of the cartoons I'm watching are not anime.
We could replace Wednesday with a different day.
Yeah. Maybe if you watch some more cartoons, you got to watch some Owl House. I think you'll like Owl House. It's short. Season 2's coming.
Eh.
It's only like 12 episodes. And it actually has a real plot that gets to a good point. All right. Anyway, I think we can get started. Oh, 2 more people. There's 7 people watching. Haven't started yet.
Go away, people.
It's Monday. Oh, no. This is like old Geek Night styling. It's... I was going to whistle, but I think my crisp would remove that from what you're hearing. It's Monday, November 9th, 2020. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, there is a new president of the United States, but more importantly, we are talking about the hypertext transfer protocol. So, we knew that Joe Biden had become the president before the weekend. Like, we already knew, but no one had called it officially except Decision Desk.
One of those situations I always talk about where Rim brings the news on the show, and I'm like, we knew this news already. This isn't news. And Rim's like, no, but now that it's officially confirmed, it's a different news. And I'm like, I knew that last year. I knew that my whole life.
Well, I mean, in this case, if we did have an electoral college, we knew like the night of the election because the popular vote is like, it's a landslide in the popular vote. Like they're still counting. It's crazy.
Millions more people. If we had to, if the good people and the bad people had to fight each other,
we
and
win.
The non-voters and ineligible voters just didn't participate.
Like, Biden won by like 4 million already, and is projected to hit like
people.
And it's going to be like 7 million.
How big your army is at the beginning, if you're outnumbered by 4 million, you're in deep shit, right? I mean, even an army of 1 billion versus an army of 1 billion plus 4 million is in deep, deep shit, right? Because the billion versus the billion fight, right? But 4 million of those billion are being double teamed.
No.
So they've only got, assuming everyone's equal strength.
Or actually, that's how what you're talking. You know how you're talking? You're talking how people would lose wars in ancient times, and even medieval times, and even all the way up to World War I. Because the real use of that extra 4 to 7 million is not to double team. No. That's not how you do it.
No.
Those are the reserves.
Oh, okay. So
the attrition battle comes down, both sides are almost depleted, and then cavalry and Gandalf the White come over the horizon.
Well, that's how we did, and it worked.
Yep. But the official was delayed for basically bullshit reasons, but it was delayed.
The official will be when the House certifies the slates of electors, which is next month. I don't know when that is.
There's actually a bunch of different steps.
That's the final step, though.
Well, yeah, the final step is Inauguration Day. It is possible.
That's just simply ceremonial. The only one that matters is the certification.
A point of order, it is possible if the Electoral College can't get its shit together on Inauguration Day. What do you think happens if the Electoral College just doesn't vote and Inauguration Day comes? I'm just curious, trivia bit, then we'll get into the show.
I mean, I know a lot of the scenarios.
That scenario in particular.
I don't know that scenario.
That scenario is actually really complicated, and there's debate about it. But the best guess is that the current president is no longer the president, and you just follow the 25th Amendment. So you say, well, president's not the president anymore, nor is the vice president. The next one in line is the Speaker of the House, who is still the Speaker of the House. They immediately become the acting president. Which I'd be fine with that, President Pelosi.
Great.
But something happened to me that had nothing to do with the election. Because on the day with the official announcement, Emily and I were hiking in the wilderness. We were in a valley, no cell signal, just enjoying the world, not thinking about politics. Just birds were singing. It was beautiful. We crested a ridge, And suddenly, my phone starts buzzing. Emily's looking at her watch because her watch is buzzing. We must have gotten like one bare bar of data cresting this ridge. And the first thing I see is a text message. I don't even have data yet from our friend Scott Johnson. And he's like...
Text messages are going to get through much more readily.
Yep. I think we've talked about on Geek Nights why the text will always get through. Or won't. But
no, actually it won't. But...
It won't, but it'll get somewhere. It might just be in a rotating buffer in a cell tower for years, never going anywhere.
Anyway.
And I get this text, and he's like, pretty sure you're in the middle of nowhere. We won. I wanted to be the first one to tell you, and he was. So the next day, I go out to run, and I'm on Randall's Island, just doing my half marathon like I do every weekend. And this dude tried to have a fist fight with me. Nothing to do with the election.
Running, how long are you near a person if you're running? Were they also running?
Right? So get this. I stopped on Randall's Island. I was about 7.5 miles into the 13-mile run.
Where on Randall's Island did you stop?
Near ICANN Stadium.
Okay, over by the stadium.
Because the cops were gathering there for some reason. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Because there were so many cops there, and they had all the riot police gear, and like all the sergeants were lined up, and it looked like the sergeants were all like addressing the police, and they were holding like the riot helmets. And I was like, what fuckery is this? Like, gonna tweet just in case some shit's going down. Like, what's going on? So I stop, take pictures, like, can't really figure out what's going on. I tweet about it. And then I'm walking toward the bridge to get back on the RFK to do the rest of my run.
Yep.
And I'm looking at my phone, and suddenly this guy on a bike who is riding on the sidewalk, like, stops in front of me, like, suddenly, and starts yelling at me to get out of his way. Now,
okay,
there's a bike lane in the street. Also, you're an adult. You shouldn't be biking on the sidewalk, but whatever. I ignore him. Like, I just kind of laugh and keep walking.
There is a very brief area there where they put a tiny strip of, like, bike/walk.
Oh, this is way past that. Way past
right
that.
At the entrance to the bridge.
Yeah. But where we are is where we were is way past that. There's that really narrow, like a little over, like barely 2 feet wide old sidewalk.
Okay.
I don't know why this dude's biking out. Whatever. He yells at me, and like I get out of his way, and I kind of laugh and just keep walking. I didn't even flip him off yet. Like, I didn't even like do anything. Because, you know, I was going to flip that dude off, but I didn't. I was still just like laughing, like, whatever, because I was in the middle of my tweet.
How to flip someone off when you're holding your phone? You got to put the phone away. Then
exactly. So before I can even flip the dude off, because I start laughing a little bit, he starts following me, yelling at me about disrespecting him. And then he starts threatening to fight me and he's throwing slurs out, and he's about to punch me. So I like back off like fast, and I start recording him. Because, you know, if he's going to fight me, like, I'm going to have to deal with the police at some point. So I have the camera up, and I'm like, I got video, dude. What the fuck? And now he changes his tune. He still wants to fight me. He's aggressively chasing me, but he's yelling, put the phone down so we can settle this like men. And I'm just like, fuck you. Leave me alone. I'm videoing you. I'm going to call the cops. Like, what the fuck? Now, I don't actually want to call the cops. I just want this dude to go away.
Yeah.
Because if I call the cops, like, he might get shot, and don't really want that to happen, even though this dude is a super piece of shit. So I do something I have done multiple times in my life, and the reason I'm telling this story and taking some time to tell it is that this works. So this dude clearly, like, he's getting to the point where he's about to, like, try to punch me and take my phone to get rid of the recording, or to not have a recording of him fighting with me, because I guess he thinks he's going to win this fight. I don't think he realized that if it had come to a fight, I was going to kick him in the nads hard immediately.
That's exactly my plan as well.
So
I have to hit you.
So I put my phone up, like I futz with it, and I act like I'm on the phone with 911 while I'm backing up from him. I'm not actually on the phone with 911. I'm, in fact, still recording video. So, and I'm like, 911? Yeah, no, this guy's threatening me. Yes. Yeah, and I'm like doing this whole bit. And the dude keeps trying to act like he wants to fight me, and he's still following me. But as soon as I start describing his appearance in detail and where he is to nobody, he starts to back off a little bit and obviously is frightened, but his machismo is still too up, and he doesn't want to like admit that he lost. So eventually I'm like, yeah, he's got a tattoo on his right leg. Yeah, he's still following me. Yeah, I can stick around. And then he starts to back off, like at that point. Like, I think he realizes that He thinks I actually did call the police. They're on the way and he's in trouble. So he starts to leave slowly. Unrelatedly, I could not have timed this better. An ambulance is going by, like way off in the distance, and it runs a red light. And it blips its sirens while it runs the red light. And I can see this because it's way behind him, but he's still looking at me. When that siren goes, I wave like, hey, like whoever, and he fucking books. He is gone so fast.
That's right.
I didn't actually call the police because whatever. I think I scared that guy enough.
It works.
That's the end of my story. That's just what happened to me randomly.
Okay.
So you got any tech news?
There's a tiny tech news. So I don't know how many people are aware of this company called Sling, right? I've been aware of them since like the mid 2000s because my boss at my first job out of college was like a very early customer of theirs and was bragging because he thought it was just so cool, their technology. So what the Sling box is, if you don't know, is you, for some reason, buy cable or satellite television. Why the hell you do that?
Yeah.
And you connect this box up to it, I guess, but after your cable box or whatever, in between your television. And what you can do with this box is then on any of your other devices in the world, right, you would run the Sling software, like a little application. And what you do is you connect to your own television, right? Your own cable that you're paying for is rebroadcasting itself over the internet to you and only you. So it's like you're not pirating the television because you're paying for it, right? But like when you watch pirate television on the internet, you're watching someone else slinging to a million people or however many people are pirating and watching, right? These legal streams.
Now, the legality of this was never,
as
far as I can tell, the legality of the Slingbox stuff was never like fully determined, but it seemed like it was working.
Cared because it wasn't taking money away from cable companies and they weren't even offering a competing feature.
Yep.
Right.
It feels like it was in the spectrum of like using a VCR, like you're shifting to yourself. So
it's like you paid for it. You're paying for the Sling service on top of that from another vendor, and you're streaming your own cable to you live, right? And of course, it's like it's your own cable. So like, let's say Rim is at home, and I'm using Rim's Sling, right? Because he shared his Sling account with me.
Because that's what I would have done if I had a Sling. That's what I would do.
That's right. So Rim is watching the hockey game, and I'm watching the hockey game, right? But then, the hockey game's over, and Rim switches to Owl House, right? Well, guess what? I'm watching Owl House now. I can't. The cable box can't be on two channels at once. It's not like you're streaming literally whatever the cable box is watching.
That's how they get you. In fact, in old TVs, you kids might be too young to remember. TVs got this feature, picture-in-picture, and it was a big deal at the time but to make it work,
two cable boxes.
Yep, you either had to have two cable boxes or you had to have a splitter before the cable box, and then only the non-premium channels would work in the picture-in-picture.
Yeah. Anyway, so Sling was a pretty cool thing for people who weren't super technologically advanced, a way to pay money to get this feature. Obviously, very technologically advanced people would use a computer with a capture card and some open source software, right? Set up a DVR kind of situation. I think DVRs also really made Sling largely unnecessary, right? Because you could just record whatever it is that you were.
I feel like Sling was used primarily for sports.
Yeah, the other thing with Sling is that it doesn't save you money. It costs you more money, right? People want to move toward, we would rather.
Yeah, Sling sold this. This wasn't like a little product, like you buy their hardware.
Yeah, you get the hardware, you pay for the service. I think it has a subscription. The point is, Sling is dead. RIP. Rest in peace. They're shutting it down. They're not making any more Sling products. They're discontinuing all their service. And I think they said 2 years from now, everything that people have will just be bricked. So the end of Sling is here.
And the sad thing is, reading this fact,
I'm more surprised it lasted this long.
I didn't know it was still around, to be honest.
I think it's at least 15 years old, right?
When you sent me this news, I was literally about to respond with the Slowpoke gif, and then I saw that it was actually current real news from today.
Yeah, it is.
Breaking news on Geek Nights here.
Even so, their technology did work incredibly well, even in the earliest days. That boss I told you about, who was like my boss in my first post-college job, who was showing it off, I remember him having Sling set up at his house, and he had a this is BlackBerry era, pre-iPhone, 2004, 2005, and he had what is it called, Windows CE in those days, I think, right? So I think he had a Windows CE based smart tab,
wow.
Pilot thing, and he could watch the Sling video on that. And he also in the office, at the time that I was there, they upgraded the whole phone system in the office. So we all got new phones that were all, VoIP phones that were hooked up to software on the computer and, everything, right? And it's all Windows XP, right? So, but he on his desk, because he's a CTO, right, got the fanciest model of VoIP phone, right, to put on the desk, and that model of VoIP phone ran Windows CE, and he installed the Sling app on it and would watch
my God,
on the VoIP phone in 2005, right, ish.
That has a similar energy to that time when we were in college driving to Penguicon and we had an access point in the car.
Right. The point is, Sling was an impressive technological feat of like video encryption, from point to point over the internet, with quality management, lag management, and all, and such, right? But just as a useful consumer product, the price they charge, not worth it. They didn't make money. But yeah, a notable, interesting thing.
This fact doesn't fuck around either. It's like, question, will Slingbox be releasing any new products? Answer, no.
No, we're done.
What about support? Fuck you, is basically what it says.
Yeah. So, I mean, on the one hand, I wouldn't never use their products because I would never pay for cable anymore. But on the other hand, I sort of respect what they did. And
they got away with it. It's a service that made sense.
It's a little bit sad to see them go, but also indifferent.
Yeah, well, because it's kind of like, it's one of those situations where if you or I, like you alluded to earlier, wanted to do something like this, we just use some open source software and the extra PCs we always have lying around and just make it happen.
Yep.
But normal people don't really have that. Most people don't just have an extra computer laying around or 5.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some other news. We do a lot of technology news on Geek Nights Mondays, but very rarely do we do science news, partly because we're not experts in a lot of scientific fields, all scientific fields.
Almost all.
I'd say I'm a lay expert in a handful of areas I have deep hobby interests in. But anyway, we have not done, I don't think ever, in the 15 years we've been doing Geek Nights, an arithmetic news.
Okay.
You wouldn't think
someone solved one of the problems.
Yeah, I'm not talking maths, general math, theory of math. I'm talking pure arithmetic, how to multiply 2 numbers together.
Well, I know how to do that.
There has been a relatively recent advancement from April of this year in how to multiply 2 numbers together. Are you sure
this is one of those things where someone way long ago in India or Persia already discovered this and someone rediscovered it and they're pretending like they invented it?
No. In fact, in 1960, a Russian mathematician basically finally, for millennia, it was, I'm quoting the article here, for millennia, it was widely assumed that there was, in fact, no faster way to multiply numbers than the way that we all know, the way you all learned, the way I multiply numbers to this day. Well, for times tables. But, you have 2 numbers. You take the bottom number, and you'll multiply every digit of the bottom number by every digit in the top number. And then you just do that, adding powers of 10 as you go down. You carry everything. That's how you multiply. For thousands of years, no one came up with a faster or better way to do it.
Pretty sure that in other countries they teach the children to multiply with a different way. I think in Japan
that way is the fundamental way. Times tables and small ones maybe, but multiplying 2 numbers with a large number of digits.
You can do it by drawing lines and then drawing lines across the other way and then circling the intersections and then grouping them.
Yeah, but that's not faster, and more importantly, it's not faster computationally. All those methods require n to the 2 time, n being the total number of digits of the 2 numbers, give or take. So in the 60s, a Russian mathematician basically said, yeah, we're pretty sure there's no faster way to do it. And this other guy just recently found a way. After a week of searching, I guess. You can read this article. This way's legit. But it's
Can we
not.
make computers change to do it this way instead of the way
Yes,
they
the
do now?
only reason this is interesting.
Binary computers, not quantum ones.
This way is not really faster for a human to do because very rarely will a human multiply two very long numbers by hand. Very rarely are you going to multiply two 20-digit numbers by each other for funsies. But, and the methods outlined here, you can go to this website, it's pretty straightforward. But basically, it makes the computational time to multiply two numbers together be linear. That's a big deal. And
Make it true.
this article does a really good job of explaining it in a way. I cannot paraphrase this article because I am not like up on modern theory of math or modern arithmetic like or any of this. But if you read the article, it will explain it at a level of detail that you will understand. And it has a very good visual diagram of how this works and why it saves time.
I'd be very interested to see someone create, take like an FPGA or something and, set it up to multiply that way instead of, with the existing, circuits.
Yep.
And see not only if that how much faster it is, because computers do a lot of multiplying, but also how much power it saves.
Yeah, you can read the article to see all the details.
I don't know how many more transistors you'll need. I don't, because I haven't read anything. I don't know anything about it.
There's a great, the quote here is like, quote, "It was kind of a general consensus that multiplication is such an important basic operation, just from an aesthetic point of view, that such an important operation requires a nice complexity bound. From general experience, the mathematics of basic things are at the end always elegant in some fashion." So this article is just really neat, and it's an area that I never thought I would think about multiplication again in my life, except in the context of doing multiplication. And this article made multiplication interesting to me. Anyway, things of the day. What do you got?
So, I much like many people do, when you discover a thing, sometimes you fall down some sort of hole on YouTube and consume all of that thing, right? And then when you're a nerd, you just got to tell someone about that thing, right? So it all started. I was watching some worthless K-pop video, right, where Sulgi from Red Velvet was answering stupid questions, because those are the only kind of questions you're allowed to ask idols, right? And someone asks her a question, and they say, "Hey, when you go to the karaoke, what song do you sing?" Right? And you're thinking, she's probably just going to say, might not even give a specific answer because it might be controversial, right? What if she mentions like a singer who got in trouble or something, right? And the song she says is Bakwa by Lee Jung-hyun.
All right.
Have you ever heard that song in your life?
No.
Yes, you have.
I should clarify that. Almost definitely I've heard it.
That's right. So I was like, when I heard that, I was like, what? Is that song? Is it that song? And I looked up, and yes, it was. In the year 2000, when we played Dance Dance Revolution, the mix that was available at the time was third mix. And it was well known, right? Because fourth mix came out shortly thereafter, and then fifth, and then we sort of played less after that.
Yep. I mean, I play a lot more now because of COVID, but anyway.
Sure. It was well known that there was a special third mix. The Korean third mix.
Oh, shit.
And in the Korean third mix, right, there were 2 of the songs from third mix had been removed, but I think maybe 6 or 8 songs had been added, right? And one of those special added songs in third mix Korean was indeed Bakwa. Bakwa. Bakwa.
Oh, my God.
Bakwa. And it was that song. So now that I finally, for some reason, I've been listening to K-pop shit for like almost a decade and had never known, right, what the hell that song was or who the hell sang it, right? So now
I never thought about it. It was the song I played because the third mix Korean machine was 25 cents for 5 songs in Wildwood.
Right. So there was also another song in third mix Korean, Wa. Right?
Yep.
That is also Lee Jung-hyun. So now I'm like, well, who the hell was this Lee Jung-hyun person making these songs in our, mid 2000s techno dance style, right? This person, Lee Jung-hyun, is a ridiculous person the Koreans have been keeping secret from everybody, right? So she's like, I think she's like 40 now. So I guess then she was like 20-ish, right? She's a really tiny person, like a little tiny person. And singing, I mean, she sings like a drunk person at a karaoke, right? It's like she doesn't have a lot of range, but she can sing with the range she has, right? Dancing, it's like, does she have a lot of dancing technique? I mean, more than we do, right? But not like the K-pop people you have today.
Not the height of the craft that molds these people into entertaining machines
No.
in the year 2020.
Not even close. But when she dances, she's like a drunk person at a karaoke. She's just like so excited.
You know what you know what that gives me a similar energy to? Captain Jack.
She's pretty much Korean female Captain Jack, but another comparison would be, I think someone said, Lee Jung-hyun, Korea's Lady Gaga, and then and the reply was like, no. Lady Gaga is the U.S.'s Lee Jung-hyun. So she obviously doesn't have the musical talent of Lady Gaga, who can really sing and play instruments and write music. But in terms of every different song she has, she's got like a totally different aesthetic and different stage going on. Like one stage, she's like wearing like, like weird alien stuff, and another stage is like disco time, right? It's like she just mixes every single time she comes back. She's got something ridiculous and some kind of gimmick going on. She's just like this. It's just too fun. And obviously, if you're a DDR type person, you're probably going to enjoy most of this person's music. So I went and I watched, there's not that many of them because her career was in the past mostly. She's mostly an actress, actually. She's actually popular in China and Japan as well. I guess they weren't telling us either. But the point is, my thing of the day is the best single performance of Lee Jung-hyun that I could find. The one that is the best one of this song called Micha, I guess. M-I-C-H. So it's a Korean word. I don't know, But yeah, if you like that sort of thing, if you go to YouTube, there's an hour-long video that's like every single song she did, at least every title track worth listening to.
Oh, no, I just went into my NAS to check on something, because I have every DDR that was ever officially released for Stepmania, obviously. I have Third Mix and Third Mix Plus. I don't have Third Mix Korean.
Oh, you're missing 8 songs.
I'm missing those 8 songs. I'm going to go get them individually.
They might have been in later mixes, though. I don't know.
Yeah, I got to, because I honestly...
I feel like Wah might have been in 5th mix. I don't know.
Once I hit 8th, after 8th mix, I kind of lose track of what's where. And a lot of old songs re-emerged in X2 or X3.
But yeah, so it only took 20 years to figure out who this person was. And then they have earned the right to be a thing of the day on a Monday.
It was funny. As soon as you said Bakwa, the whole song played in my head. Instantly.
And a lot of the other songs, I'm not sure if they were in DDR, but they have this ring of familiarity, and I can't tell where I've heard them before or if I've heard them before. Because they sound like 2000s techno songs.
Which is actually some of my favorite aesthetics.
But some songs, she switches up the genres too. There's one song she was just punk rocking on stage. Where she doesn't care. She's whatever.
All right. So my thing is a very short fiction. This is a science fiction story narrated with a little animatic looking animation on YouTube. It's 3 minutes and 42 seconds long. And, which we've reviewed a lot of different science fiction over the years. We talked about some Bradbury and some Heinlein, and in the book club at some point we'll talk about in the future different science fiction. But
20th century white guy sci-fi.
Yep. But there's a lot of non-white guy sci-fi and a lot of different kinds of science fiction. Some of my favorite science fiction stories are the ones that almost have a sort of form as function, where they're written in an odd way, or they're very, very short, like microfiction is something I'm a big fan of. And this is a story. It's titled, My Job is to Open and Close Doors. It is 3 minutes and 42 seconds long, including the credits. And it is the story told from the perspective of an AI whose job is to open and close the doors on a spaceship. That is it.
So I thought it was going to be the grocery store door opening device.
Oh, no, it's that kind of device, but it controls the doors on a spaceship, but it's written from the point of view of an AI that has to figure stuff out based on what it knows about the world. And the story is good. 4 minutes long, not even. So, like, spoilers, whatever. But basically, the thing starts, and a person goes into the airlock and hits the button, and the AI is ready to open the door. But the AI is like, wait, the person is not wearing a helmet. Does that matter? And that's the story. Like, what's going on?
I mean, that was sort of obvious. That's where that story was going to go.
Yeah, it was. The story is really well framed, partly because of the way it's told. Like, the AI will interrupt itself to try to figure things out about humans or the world, but does not have all of the necessary information to figure these things out, and is trying to make a path toward a decision point. It's just really, really well done. Like, this thing is great, and I encourage you to listen to the whole thing. If you don't have an attention span for that, like, I don't know what to tell you.
That's my style. I'll check that out.
You'll like it. I think you'll like it a lot. In the meta moment, we actually have some really important meta news. We've talked about this off and on. If you don't know, there is a GitHub repository where we have been workshopping a new code of conduct for the broader Geek Nights community.
Yeah, if you have a community on the internet these days, you gotta have a code of conduct. So
now, we had one a long time ago, but I kind of just wrote it, and then Scott added a bunch of stuff to it, and we're two white dudes with money, so clearly there are blind spots and biases that we wouldn't have thought about. Like, we thought, like, oh, we should ban Nazis, but there's lots of other types of behaviors that we wouldn't have thought about unless someone reminded us or prompted us or pointed at us and said, hey, what about this?
The point is, we tried to strike a balance between accepting input from many sources and also hurrying our ass up and, getting it done.
Yep.
We probably didn't balance that well, but whatever, it doesn't matter.
We solicited feedback, and more importantly, we got a lot of implicit feedback from people complaining about what we had put forth, and that actually led to some of the parts of this policy.
Anyway, we, can't change the past. This is the present. We now have a code of conduct. It is now 100% in force. So if you want to participate in any Geek Nights community, whether it's an obvious one like our forum or our Discord server, or if it is even just like an official Geek Nights meetup at some future when we can have conventions again, or replying to us on Twitter, right? It's like if you violate our code of conduct, you're like replying to the Geek Nights account on Twitter, the Geek Nights account on Twitter will block you, right?
Now, this does not apply to like my personal Twitter. My code of conduct is if you annoy me, I block you.
Yes, these are official Geek Nights spaces, right? And you can read the code of conduct to get all the info, which you should, but you should also come participate in our spaces, right? This is not like we now have rules in our spaces, don't come. It's like, no, we now have rules in our spaces. Therefore, if you have not come, or maybe if you have left, or who knows.
It's important to state, even if it seems obvious, it's important to state out loud why a community exists and the parameters of engagement within that community. And we have codified it. It was difficult to do. It took a while to write this thing.
And if you want to, if you have any suggestions, if you come and look at it and you maybe, still see some problems, even though it's been thought about so heavily, it will never be perfect and continue to be edited as the world changes forever, right?
And because this is Geek Nights Mondays, I want to point out, it is in GitHub.
It exists.
It is in GitHub. And if you want to, make a pull request. If you have never used GitHub before or Git before and you don't think you're a technologist, you're listening to a Monday Geek Nights. Let me tell you, there is no lower stakes, zero consequences way to learn how to use Git than trying to submit a change to our code of conduct to me and Scott.
You don't even need to know how to code. It's a text, right?
Yeah. Like the worst case scenario, Scott doesn't Scott doesn't accept your merge request.
Yeah. You can submit an issue. You can just email us. You can DM us on any platform, right? As long as you don't violate the code of conduct while doing so.
Yep. But we're excited about this. We think it'll help codify this as time goes on, because the Geek Nights community is very fractured due to the fact that the world is different. Forums are old. Mostly old people use forums. The Discord community...
most other I think not like I guess most other things like podcasts, Twitch streams, any sort of content creator, a YouTube person. People don't set up forums these days. It's like they have their YouTube, their Instagram, their Twitter. It's like and their whatever, and that's what they have.
Yeah, maybe there's a subreddit that they may or may not control.
They might have a Discord server or a subreddit. People don't have like forums in separate places these days, right? Maybe they have a Facebook page. I don't know what
Yeah,
people have.
I do
We
think
have all
forums
those
are
things.
important. I think it's a lost art that we need spaces like that are a little more slow, a little more like thoughtful, longer posts, more dense content, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think actually, you know, those people, because they don't have the forum, they're very active on all those other platforms, whereas we are, you know, less active on those other platforms.
Yep. We are more active on like the Geek Nights Discord than we used to be. I'm in there occasionally. Scott's in there a lot. I'm trying to be in there more as I have time.
Yeah, maybe we should try to be more active on all of them instead of just, I don't know. But regardless, they are now all governed by not only the codes of conduct on the respective platforms themselves, but also ours, at least as far as interacting in the space that Geek Nights can control. So.
Yep. And the last thing I'll say about it is when you read it, one thing that is explicitly called out, and it's relevant to the bit we talked about in the beginning. It is honestly like we don't fuck around with our terms of service. It is you're not allowed to support the American Republican Party if you engage in any of our spaces, like at all. That is literally written in our code of conduct for a reason.
Well, if somehow there's another big switcheroo like there was decades ago,
oh, we'll update it if it changes.
We'll update it and we'll say we'll switch it around and be like, oh, the Democrats are the Nazis now. Yep. The thing's changed.
But right now, the Republicans are the Nazis.
That's right.
Otherwise, Tail of Genji, we'll see if we start reading it when it's cold. I actually started reading again a little bit this weekend because I had a poop that took longer than usual.
What a big poop.
It was.
And you ran out of things on your phone?
Well, partly because Twitter was just a sea of celebration to the point that I couldn't keep up with it, and I actually broke my rule of read every tweet and just let it wash over. I'm going to re-engage with Twitter in a couple days when things calm down a little bit.
Yeah. I got a new phone coming on Friday, I guess, so maybe I'll read on there. It'll have such a nice screen.
All right. So before we get into the main bit, someone who's in the stream right now just asked us for a link to the Discord, and since they're active and on the stream, I'm going to post that right now.
Yeah, if you go to our website, person watching the stream at frontrowcrew.com, you'll see there's all kinds of stuff going on there. The website needs a big update, but all the information is still there, and in the news about the code of conduct, there are links to the forum and the Discord. So.
Yep, and I'm going to send a link to the Discord right now, just to this person, because they seem cool. Since we just said, let's engage more with the people who are using these places. There's people in this stream. I will engage with you. It does
apply. The code of conduct does apply to you people in that YouTube live chat. So
weirdly enough, this is like a random aside. YouTube is where I have had to have the least like heavy hand in moderation.
Well, I think because YouTube, you know, despite YouTube comments being a shithole, YouTube does have like an automatic filter, right?
Yeah.
That other spaces don't have. You know?
But the other thing that's going on there is that the people who comment on Geek Nights videos in particular tend to be like 90% great. Like it's not just that, there aren't bad people there.
You're not going to end up on like how to win at Carcassonne as a recommended video next to a Nazi video.
We are definitely niche content when it comes to that.
Yeah. If for some reason Nazis were into Carcassonne lately, we'd be in trouble.
All right. I have posted all those things to you in the stream, and now we're going to continue with the show. Thing of the day. All right. So, can't believe we never talked about this. The next...
Well, we deleted it.
Oh, yeah, of course I deleted it. But, so the next Geek Nights Monday, we're going to talk about web browsers, which was our first idea. But we realized, in the old days, the Monday episodes of Geek Nights, we would do these, like, foundational series where, like, we do a Monday, and that would, like, set the stage for the next Monday and the next Monday and the next Monday. We'd be like, here's how binary math works. Now we're going to talk about transistors, and then we get up to computers. So HTTP is, like, one of the most important things in the modern world.
Yeah, pretty much. So, I mean, it's just a protocol for computers to talk to each other. It's a pretty high application level protocol. It's not like, it's on top of TCP. So it's like computers connect with TCP, and using that connection that's already got so many layers underneath it of stuff going on, right? You're then going to use the TCP connection to speak the HTTP protocol between two computers to exchange information, right? Yep. And this is an important protocol because not only is this how web browsers and web servers talk to each other using this, protocol, but also because, so many applications have been built upon the web, pretty much so many applications these days, even ones that aren't web browsers, are now speaking HTTP as a means of communicating with each other, and avoiding having to code, networking stuff, which sucks to code. Right?
Yep.
So
like you hear people talk about web APIs. Like a lot of times, even like APIs will basically just act similar to how a web browser would work, hitting some random endpoint.
Right. It's like, and maybe it's the late 90s, early 2000s. You want to make a video game. It's like turn-based, right? And you want to have it be networked. So what do? You have to make a special server. You have to come up with your own protocol, right, for how your game and the server are going to talk to each other, right? You got to, invent all this stuff. And that's what games did in those days, right? But now you could just be like, well, I'll just run a web server, right? I'll run a web server, and then my video game that's running on someone's phone or on their Switch or whatever is just going to make an HTTP connection to my web server and talk to it like it's a web page, and we'll use that to send high scores or whatever logins. We'll just do it all the web way because all that stuff is already cookie cutter.
Yep.
Save a bunch of effort. Right?
Now,
so it's important to know how the HTTP protocol works to understand how a lot of the internet works.
Yep. And it's not even complicated. Like we can pretty much explain the whole thing if we skip over like a few technical details. And it's also not even that old. It is less than 30 years old.
It's not that old.
1991.
It's literally the web, right? When someone says the web, they don't mean the whole internet. The internet's bigger than the web.
They mean the www.
Yes. The part of the internet that is talking HTTP as opposed to talking any other protocol is the web. And the rest of the internet that's not speaking in HTTP is not the web.
Yep.
Right?
This is like Ted Nelson, Tim Berners-Lee internet that we're talking about.
Even if you have part of the internet that isn't talking HTTP, for example, an IRC server isn't talking HTTP.
Yep.
Right?
Or if you're in a web browser, you type FTP://. That's not HTTP.
Exactly. But people will make things like web-based IRC clients, and now you're speaking HTTP, and something is translating that to IRC, and you're talking an IRC, and right? So that's a thing.
Yep. So HTTP, I think that the history lesson I do want to talk about, though, is what it actually stands for matters. It is the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, because it was designed to allow people to build hypertext interactions.
Mm-hmm. The original design for the web, right? The original World Wide Web, it was HTTP and HTML, the two pieces, right? And the idea is that you have HTML, the hypertext markup language, which is a way to make a document, and a document with, links in it, right? And you could click on the links that would take you to other documents.
Yep, you realize links were called hyperlinks. We call them links now because this history doesn't matter to most people anymore.
Right. And the idea of that having documents that link to each other, right? Well, if the documents link to each other, you need some protocol for requesting the other document, right? You have one document, you click on a link, you need to get the next document, right, that you just clicked on the link for. You can't download every document in the world to your computer at once.
Yep.
You need to do it one at a time. So HTTP and HTML go together. You have the web browser, which takes HTML and, turns it into a document that you can read, but it also is speaking HTTP to web servers to get you more documents when you click on links or type in URLs into the browser. And that's still basically how the web works.
Yep.
However, the original design for the web was such, the web these days is pretty much read only. All of the writing is sort of done in not the original way that was intended.
Yep.
The original way that was intended is that, you would be like post to a web page to create a new document, right? You would make a post call, HTTP call to create a document. You would make an update call to update a document in place. You would make a put document, right?
Like imagine a world where Scott is running a web software. I'm not going to say web server or web browser because those kind of came later in a lot of ways. Yeah. So Scott's running a web thing. I'm running a web thing. I have some documents. Scott has some documents. I just send a request to Scott's thing to create a new document on his server, and it just appears.
Yep.
And then I link to it from one of my documents. But
I'm on RIM. I do a get to get a document from RIM. I'm reading it. I make some changes to it. I send an update request via HTTP to RIM, and his document updates.
Imagine imagine the World Wide Web as originally envisioned as literally every web browser is a web server and everything is Wikipedia. Literally
Pretty
everything.
Much. That was the original idea for the web. And
now, it turns out spam and shitheads mean that doesn't work, but it was a noble idea.
Yeah, it can work in certain cases, but it didn't work. So the way the things actually happen is that most of the time when using the web, you're making a GET request. You make a TCP connection to a server. You send literally the letters GET in ASCII, followed by some path like get index.html, get /geeknights /2020/1109 / something.mp3.
It's real simple. You can do a packet capture and understand web traffic like with your human eyeballs.
Yeah, you can just open up your terminal and type telnet space google.com and then type get / and the HTML of google.com will just appear.
And if you do that on a simple website, you can probably read it.
Yeah. So that's what happens is you tell get, you send a GET request, and the web server sends back the document or whatever it is at that URL, and then it's up to you. You've now received that document. It's up to your computer to decide what to do with that. If there includes JavaScript, maybe your web browser will run the JavaScript, maybe not. Maybe some of it, maybe not some of it. There's HTML. It's going to render it. How's it going to render it? There's instructions on how they would like you to render it, but it's up to you, right? They just sent you documents, and what you do with them is now up to you. And when you post these days, you're still sending data to the server, but the server isn't updating the document at the URL that you posted to. It's, probably performing some, validation and computation and putting that data into a database and using that data in the database to then render and automatically generate documents.
Yep. Well, same with gets. When you very rarely get back like a file or a document that is stored somewhere. You get back a dynamically created file created at the time you made the request. Your request caused it to exist just for you in that moment.
Or at least part of it, right? You make a get to reddit.com. They load a Reddit homepage that's your Reddit homepage. You make a Google search. They create a Google search result. That's not, it might be a global Google search result if you were like using private browsing or something, but it's probably a Google search result customized for you that the server generated, ran some code when it got that request. And then the code created an HTML document to send back to you that wasn't just sitting on the server waiting. Although there are many static websites still out there, which literally are just a bunch of files, and you request them and you get the files as they are on the disk, and no computation is really happening.
Now, one way why this was very important and different from how things were done previously, like you look at how Gopher and things worked, like other methods to share documents or information, was that, like Scott pointed out, it's sort of this two-way thing. But it's also hyper generic, as we discussed. But the third way it's really important or the third thing that's interesting about it is that it is completely stateless, in that once you complete a transaction, it doesn't matter that you have completed that transaction. The server doesn't know that it was you that did shit.
Yeah, exactly. So if I make a post, right, with my username and password, right? Okay, and then the server sends a response. And then that's it. We're done, right? If I then send another request, like, okay, get me my user profile, it doesn't remember anything about the previous request at all. It's a brand new request.
Yep.
So how the hell does it know that I'm logged in, not logged in? How is this state happening, right? There's every single request is brand new from the void, doesn't know anything about what happened in the past. How do we carry the state over? And there's extra features that are built on top, which is basically cookies and headers, right?
Yep, that's where like a lot of these things came from, because the protocol is so simple that it doesn't actually do very much. And 90% of the logic you see in any web interaction is at a layer above HTTP effectively. Like, example.
JavaScript.
Yep, JavaScript, the data transfer, a lot of URLs have like a bunch of random gibberish at the end and a bunch of like that is your request in many cases directly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, new kinds of files, CSS files that were invented
later. In fact, early HTTP actually initiated a complete TCP connection for each request and then terminated that connection after the response came back. They added the idea of a keep alive later.
Yep, and now they've got newer things like HTTP 3/quick,
That
WebSockets.
just came out. That is like 2017, 2018. Like that is brand new.
It's not. It didn't literally just came out, but in terms of the scope of the entire web, yeah, it just came out.
Yeah. In terms of like being used widely, I mean, HTTP2, actually, check this out.
WebSockets is like how Jackbox works.
Yep.
Right?
2015, 2.0. 2018, 3.0.
Yep. So yeah, let's talk about the HTTP headers for a bit. So the HTTP headers is, if you're just opening up your terminal and typing get /, it's like, well, that's all you're sending to the server. But your web browser is sending a lot more information besides just get and the URL, right?
Yep.
It's sending all of this extra stuff, like here's my user agent, here's the kind of format I want to get from you. I want to get this kind of content. And here, I also here's a bunch of cookies. Here's the things that I remember about the last time I visited this website, and just all this. Your browser sends a lot of extra just meta information. Oh yeah, I'm visiting you, and the reason I'm visiting you is because my user clicked a link on this other site, right? Someone clicked a link on frontrowcareer.com. I know that you're google.com. I'm just telling you this is who sent me here, right? It's just your browser just sends all this extra stuff. And all that extra stuff, the web servers can now use that extra stuff, and often do, to make a decision about what to send, right? It's like, oh, you're using IE, I see. I will send you different HTML so that it renders properly. Oh, I see that you have included a cookie that you have saved. That cookie, let me check my database here. Yep, that is a cookie belonging to a valid logged in user. So instead of sending you a login page, I'm going to send you, the settings page.
Some of them are archaic and just not like they don't mean anything anymore. Like no one ever sends them. Some of them have been sort of appropriated to do something different from what they were originally intended, just by consensus. Some of them are used, a lot of them are actually used for performance reasons. Like even in the early days, there's one, I pulled up the list, I was looking for it. If unmodified since, like that's an example that actually makes sense because it's really old.
Yeah. That's control things like caching,
Yeah, but here's this example actually makes sense. If unmodified since basically says only send the response if the entity I'm requesting has not been modified since some previous time. So I might send a get that says if unmodified since some date, and Scott's web server just wouldn't respond, and then I know.
Well, it responds. It sends there's like a code for it, but it's like 20 something, and it's just there won't be any actual data in the response.
I only get a
number.
header back. I don't get the payload.
Right, exactly.
But I know,
nothing's changed. You don't need to reload your page. Just stay where you are.
Yep. So thus, Scott does. If I keep F5ing virtually through my system, but I'm using this if unmodified since, Scott doesn't keep sending me the payload.
Right. You're on the Geek Nights homepage and you keep reloading. Right. Well, your browser is still making requests and getting tiny responses, but it's not actually reloading the page.
Yeah.
Then we upload this episode. Suddenly, you're going to get a real response. And then you keep reloading after that, you're not getting real responses anymore. You're just getting the tiny response again, right? But yeah, all these headers, like you can put any header you want with any name and put any content in those headers that you want. But it's just that we've come to agree over time, between browser makers and web server makers, right? Well, these headers are going to have sort of codified behaviors, and we're just sort of going to agree among us that this is what they'll mean, and this is what you should do if you see them and you see these values in them. And it's just sort of like these, codes and rules you've come up with, because you can make a header of anything. So it's just up to, the community, right, and various consortiums, of people working together to agree that we'll do, these headers mean this, do things this way. And if you follow those rules, things will function properly. And if you decide to do it a different way, things might function not as users expect.
Yep. And sometimes
you can always intentionally not do or do extra things based on what you see when you're talking in HTTP. And that's up to you.
Like, for example, I might, my server might say, oh, if the user agent string is foo, I know that browser's broken, and I'm going to serve different HTML to prevent there from being a problem. But there's no standard around that. So,
or my web browser might say, well, if you see any, HTML that looks like this, that's an ad. So don't do this.
Yep. Right? Because the way HTTP is used and the way HTML are used is that it's just a way to transfer basically these documents back and forth, but it doesn't say, none of this says anything about what to do with that data once you get it, because it's completely stateless.
Yep. So yeah, that's, if you really want to see the exact details of how HTTP works, it's really not that scary. If you just Google for,
Like-
if you use HTTP to Google for how does HTTP work, or what do HTTP packets look like, or, what HTTP headers looks like and how they're formatted, it's very straightforward. You can understand it even if you don't understand anything else. And all you got to know is that web browser sends one and then the web server sends one back. And that's pretty much all there is to it.
There's only 9 methods and most of them are never used.
Some of them are used these days. They're still
But
all
used for
available.
weird, there's things that are used for weird reasons today that were never used for their original purpose.
Yes, I think in the original purpose was to use all 9, right?
Yep.
The hypertext world we were discussing, the Wikipedia world, right?
Yeah.
That never came to be. So what happened is for many, many years, people were literally just using get and post mostly, and really not using the other ones very much at all.
Head was used
But-
a lot for performance reasons before we
Head
had more
was used
bandwidth.
for debugging. You just want to see the headers, things like that. Things that normal people wouldn't be using
But
directly.
delete, patch, but
Right, but nowadays with the advent of RESTful APIs, because those functions still exist and the code for them was still there, just slumbering, people took advantage of those extra functions and have now used them to develop various APIs for different applications. And so those are now being used in various ways, especially RESTful APIs, not so much other kinds of APIs. But they're still heavily underused compared to get and post. It's pretty much just if you can get and post, you're good.
and
You're all
people misuse them. Like in the original specs, get was one of the methods that is defined as it should not change anything. You should be able to call this as many times as you want and nothing will ever change. But I know there are definitely applications out there that will change their own state based on a get request.
Yes, that is because mostly that happens because of query parameters. You make a URL, and at the end of the URL, you put $A equals B, X equals hello, right? And what happens is when the web server receives that, they remove that part from the end of the URL, and they break that into parameters, and now whatever program is running on the web server is free to interpret those parameters as it wishes, and it might do instructions. So the most common use would be for a search query.
Yep.
It'll be you go to frontrecruit.com/search/ Q equals water in the ceiling, and now you're searching for the episode about water in the ceiling, right? Stuff like that. But most of the time you'll be doing for stuff like that, you'll be doing a post, and the same exact query parameters that when you do a post, those same exact query parameters that would be in the URL are now in the body of the post. You can't visually see them in the browser, but they're basically just in a different part of the HTTP packet. They're still there. They're still the same format. And the web server will interpret those, and that's considered to just be a better idea to not mess up someone's URL bar.
Yeah.
And to use the correct command.
It is definitely it's kind of like when you see a website that has really, really, really ugly overloaded URLs, it's a sign that maybe it's not the most sophisticated system.
Yeah, there's other issues. For example, let's say you're going to a form to purchase something, right? The web was never intended originally for commerce, right?
Yeah,
You
most
type
of
in
these
your credit-
functions are supposed to be idempotent.
Yeah, you go to fill out your credit card information and your address and everything. If you put that in the URL, which will totally work, by the way.
Yeah.
If someone writes their their eShop that way, their e-commerce platform that way, then now not only is that URL being sent over the internet sort of unencrypted-y. I guess if you're using HTTPS, we'll talk about HTTPS, I guess, finally at the end, right?
Yep.
It's still going to be in your browser history, your credit card number just hanging out there, right? That's not great. So you want to put it in the post body. When you fill out forms on the web, that's a post, right? You push the save button, the submit button, the add to cart, right? Checkout button. That's making a post request and sending all the information in the form to the server for processing in a not visible, better way. If you ever see your credit card information, your username, your password in the URL bar, change that password to something else and get the hell off that, and change if you're using that password anywhere else, which you shouldn't be, change it and get the hell off that website.
I have never seen that except on malware sites I was poking at to see what the malware was going to do.
I've seen it back in the olden days.
In the old days, I saw it a lot.
Extreme olden days. Late 90s.
Not common these days. So I guess the last piece,
HTTPS.
notice there's no login, log off, any of that. That's all handled by applications. There's also no encryption or security of any kind in anything we've
Nope.
said so far.
Nothing. Nada.
So
You can just,
HTTP.
if you have access to a network and you can, read the packets on that network because it's your router or something, you can see all the HTTP traffic going back and forth, and you can see, oh, this person visited this website, and this is what came back, and
They typed this password.
This is the kind of porn they like. It's
Yep.
like,
Oh, there's
can
the
see
image
every-
resource that came back.
and since HTTP is so easy to understand, you can just read it with your eyeballs pretty much and understand what's happening.
Yep.
And
I
if
have
you
done
use
this
software-
troubleshooting problems in my life.
And if you use software to make it even easier to read, well, now you can
Yeah.
really see everything.
So HTTPS is basically the way to wrap this whole exchange in an encrypted channel, basically.
So what happens is before you start talking in HTTP, right, you make an encrypted connection with the web server, right? And there's a whole shmagegi that goes on here.
TLS
with
is
regard-
actually, like it used to be SSL, like you'd hear, it's TLS now. And TLS, the exchange that happens is actually very complicated.
Yes. But what you have to know is the important part that for users to understand is the certificate signing issue, right? So there in the world, there exist these certificate signing authorities, right? CSA, you might have heard of these, like
Yep.
VeriSign is a big one, like maybe the biggest one, but there's others, some small, some big. Let's Encrypt is like the hot one, which you should probably be using. And what they do is they're basically saying, look, we're a certificate signing authority. You trust us, right? We're basically a house of trust. That's all they exist for. And what they do is they verify that their customers who are coming, who own websites, who run websites, are who they say they are. So if I have a website and I want my website to be secure, I go and I say, hey, Trust House. No one trusts me. I'm just Scott.
Yeah.
They trust you though because you're a giant, organization. I want you to tell everyone that I'm trustworthy. And they say, oh, well, we're going to have to come and investigate. Are you trustworthy, right? Are you who you say you are? And then they say, okay, we talked to Scott. We figured it out. Scott is who they say they are. This web server is definitely owned by the person who at this domain is definitely the person who just came asking us to sign their certificate. So I make a cryptographic set of keys. They basically put a rubber stamp on my cryptographic set of keys. And then I'm now have a number, literally a number, in a file on my web server. And that number mathematically proves with cryptographic levels of no doubt that the trust group has said that I am trustworthy. So then when you come to our website, before we start webbing, right, and you start sending me your name and password and stuff, right, we do a little math between each other to arrange for some cryptographic keys between us. And because I have that cert from the Trust House, and your web browser also has a cert from the Trust House baked into it, your OS probably has some baked in as well. I know Windows has a huge list of them. Your computer trusts that group trusts me. Now your computer trusts me. Now you verify, you basically assume that I am who I say I was and not an imposter trying to set up like Chase.com that is not actually Chase.com.
Yeah, but it's just our friend Chase.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't make a fake Chase Bank website, to try to trick you into typing your bank password into something, right? And then you now know the top left of your browser where that little lock icon is going to be locked and not unlocked or red or have a skull and crossbones.
And you've never clicked on that thing.
And happy.
And you keep clicking until it shows you the details. You can actually see like the details of that certificate, who signed it, when they signed it, how strong it is, everything.
Right. So it serves these two purposes. One, the website you're visiting is the website you think you're visiting. It's not an imposter. Right. And two, now that you trust them, you do a key exchange and you create a temporary set of symmetric keys with which to encrypt all of the HTTP that you are now going to speak at each other. So if anyone on the rest of the internet decides to try to look at what your conversation is, try to look at the credit card you're sending to Amazon, try to see the password you're sending to the forum or Discord, or whatever, your secret messages to your lover, whatever, that will be encrypted and no one will be able to read it. Tough cookies.
Yep. It's beyond the scope of this show. But as of now, the way this is done is secure at the time of the transaction, and
if you're using the newest correct ways and everything is set up properly and your browser is not been tampered with, and there's so many caveats, right?
Yeah.
But if you're under normal circumstances, you're good if you see the green light.
Yep, modern TLS is incredibly powerful, and it's complex to the point that I cannot explain the full handshake without referencing a guide, because it's actually way more complicated than SSL was.
If you want to learn that, YouTube videos.
If you want to learn that, there will be a job for you forever. I struggle to find engineers who have it who understand it well enough.
There will be a job for you.
Yep.
And if you're a person using a web browser, all you need to know is don't trust a website. Don't type in anything important unless the lock is locked. And if you are running a web server or a website, use Let's Encrypt and follow the instructions on their website to the letter.
Yep.
And don't mess it up.
All right. I think we're done.
Okay.
Because I hunger.